everybody, and welcome once again to the Open Mic, the show where every week I talk to writers about their work and about the publishing industry and whatever else we could think to talk to in relation to writing. This is the Open Mic Writers in their own words. I should add that part. And I'm thrilled today because I'm welcoming back to the show for his second time on the show one of the really good young writers out there in the world today. Great short story writer. Great. Now he's got a new book coming out, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I don't know what else to say other than he's been nominated for gobs and gobs of awards, all of which are very well deserved nominations. And so, welcome back to the open mic. Curtis Ippolito, how are you doing today?
Thanks so much, Rich. I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the latest, which of course is the new book, which comes out now. As folks are hearing this, I'm not exactly sure when this show is going to air, but it's going to be very, very close, either right before or right after the new book has come out. But Waves of Burden. Tell us a little bit about Waves of Burden.
Yes, it comes out June 24th, and Waves of Burden follows Drew Jones and his adult foster brother, Jake Dwyer. And they both grew up in the foster care system in California and have come and gone out of each other's lives over the years, but they stay close and they consider themselves as close as blood brothers. And the book starts with Jake coming back into town and meeting up with Drew and his wife Gabby, who is expecting a child, Drew and Gabby's first child. And Jake kind of brings his nomadic, um, you know, unexpected lifestyle to Drew and Gabby, and some shit goes down, and he takes off on the run, and Drew has to track him down uh, and bring him back and bring back the $100,000 that he supposedly stole from a liquor store, or else uh, Drew and Jake's lives are in danger.
Well, I've been reading it, and it's really good. All I could say is, it's very relatable in some ways. I mean, I've never had a family member who did that kind of thing, but I think many of us can relate to having, people in our lives that we love dearly, and there's so many good things about them, but they also have an element to them at times that can be really problematic. And so I'm reading this going, wow, yeah, I kind of feel like I think most people will feel like they know a Jake, somewhere in their
Hmm.
life. There's somebody like this that they know that can, like I say, just be problematic for them.
Yes.
So I'm really, really enjoying it. I hope everyone goes right out and gets themselves a copy. And again, it comes out on the 24th, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, again, I've known you both as a short story writer and as a novel writer. Now, you do have one previous novel out to this. How was this experience maybe different for you this time from when you did the first one?
Sure. So it's really different. So my first novel, Burying the Newspaper Man, came out in 2021, and it was one of those pandemic book babies. And it didn't get much love right out of the gate as far as like I didn't have any bookstore events. We had a UK publisher, so it's tough to get it noticed over here in the States. And then also I was new to the book world and the crime fiction community, so I didn't know what I didn't know. And so this time around, I know a lot more. And, having put out guest edited an anthology on fire and underwater last year, I did a lot of the publicity and marketing for that. And so I kind of carried that over with this novel. And, it's also getting published by Rock and a Hard Place Press. So I know that crew there. We worked really well together. So this has been a seamless transition to my own book. And I just kind of use those same things to help publicize and market this book because, there's no market there. I'm sorry, there's no budget for that with at an indie press, or very little. So it's all on me. So I've learned quite a bit in those 5 years since my first novel came out. And, you know, and I would say I hope my craft has improved too. I think readers will hopefully pick up on that too. Like, this book I completely outlined as opposed to my first novel, which I kind of just wrote by the seat of my pants. And so I was really paying attention to detail of hitting certain beats and, the pacing and everything like that. And so I think my writing quality is better this time around too. And hopefully that continues, novel after novel. I just continue to improve.
Do you use an independent editor, or do you rely mostly just on beta readers? How do you, go through that editing process, the developmental editing process?
For Waves, I did rely on beta readers and they really helped me fine tune this and edit it. And then once it got with Rock in a Hard Place, I did go through developmental edits with Paul Garth, and those are great. He did a great job. He has a very light touch and really just helps you accentuate the good things and help you edit down the not so good things and really just made it a more solid book.
Yeah, I know a lot of writers hesitate to work with editors because they're afraid they're going to them to change it and have it become something different. And, I've talked a lot on the show with various guests about, writers groups and sometimes how somebody can be overly influential and all of that. But I'm, you know, you're you're someone, as you noted, maybe when you did the first novel to now, you've been to a million writers conferences. You've become very close with a lot of other writers. Has did that, I guess, that scenario help you through all this a little bit to where, you maybe felt like you could trust the things people were telling you a little more, or did you ever have a problem with trusting the things that maybe a writers group or others were telling you?
That's a really good question. I think in hindsight, I had nothing to worry about. I thought, you know, not, tuning my own horn, but this was a solid manuscript. And, I queried it around for a year and a half, and I obviously didn't land an agent with it, but I got so many positive responses and, you know, really nice things that were said about the book. But with that said, a great editor is a gift. And I've never worked with an editor on the developmental level or only so on the copy edit level. And I'll definitely seek that out for my next novel, maybe even before querying and hire a development editor and really make sure I get it, you know, tight and solid and as best shape as it can be. But yeah, all those other things, going to conferences, meeting other writers, opening yourself up to critique, like I think that's so important to becoming a better writer and improving your craft, no matter what stage of your career you're on.
It feels like such a dichotomy in a way because you know, you're not going to be successful at this if you can't put yourself out there. But putting
Hmm.
yourself out there, especially when you're just starting, is so scary. And, I think for a lot of people, any kind of negative feedback, no matter how gently it's delivered, can just feel crushing.
Right.
And, did you ever have that thing where I think some people still call it imposter syndrome or whatever, where you just feel like, why
Oh,
am I
brother,
here?
let me tell you. We're a week from publication day, and I'd say like the last month, last 2 months, I've just gone from I'm the worst writer ever, nobody's gonna hate this to this is genius. Why didn't an agent sign me? And why isn't this book with a big five publisher? Like, oh yeah, like imposter syndrome, I think it hits you no matter where you are. And
Yeah.
I think that's good. Like, I don't want to be someone that's just, you know, touting myself constantly and just thinks I have nothing to learn. Like I've always been someone that has believed like you always have something to learn. You can always improve no
Yeah.
matter what stage of the game you're in.
100%. It's funny. I'm a journalist by trade, and And, I work with a lot of young people, and that's a big part of what we talk about, is look, you know, I, I tell them when they come into our internship program, I've only got you for 3 or maybe 4 months. I cannot teach you how to be a veteran state house reporter completely in 4 months. I can give you a hell of a head start, but don't ever leave here thinking you know everything. I've been doing this 30 years and I still learn stuff all the time. And
Right.
that helps me a lot because, my work in progress has been in progress. I feel like since I was a very small child, and I do have a agent, and, we've had lots of bites. We haven't had anyone that's taken the whole hook, and we're still at it. I've gone through a couple of different edits, and I'm just too stubborn to quit. I mean, I write other things, but I'm just on this particular one. It's very much a personal thing. So I'm just too
Yeah, I think
stubborn to quit.
if you believe in a work, that stubbornness will pay off. And you and I have had this conversation in person, and you talked about, the number of edits and things that you've done on that work, and it's impressive. Like you're putting in the work, and it'll pay off. I know it will
Well, I
because
hope I hope you're
persistence is
right,
a huge
but
part of this, you
it
know?
really is. And I mean, and that is the thing. I do hope anyone listening or watching this right now realizes that, you know, I don't know, maybe Stephen King's first story got published and made, I don't know, but I think it's very, very rare that anybody gets out of the chute. I had a conversation years ago with Craig Johnson, who writes the
Mm.
Longmire series, and he had a 10-year gap from when he wrote the original draft of the original Longmire book, and he was so disheartened by it, he put it in a drawer and literally forgot about it, went about doing other things in his life for a decade. And then somebody asked him what he ever did with that. And at that time, he had moved from New York to rural Wyoming, and he pulled it out of her drawer and started doing the stuff with it. And here we are all these years later. He's on book like 26 in that series, and it's been, a TV series. And there was Longmire Days in Buffalo, Wyoming. And I mean, you just the only failure is quitting, right? That's what we
That's
always say.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I remember, and I think it was Donald Moss, and I ask people a lot this lately. So if you're a regular listener, you've heard me ask this before, but I think it was Donald Moss. But the the suggestion was don't if you, as a new writer, you really should not start trying to write a novel because it's too overwhelming. There's too many things, too many lessons to be learned, etc. You're far better off starting out with short stories and building your way up to that. Now, you've obviously done both now, and you're an excellent short story writer. Um, do you have a thought on that? I mean, if you had it to do over again, would
Mm.
you say, I'll get to the novel later, I'm going to write these short stories first, or how did it go for you, and how do you think about that proposition?
Yeah, I've thought about this myself because what happened with me was I went in college. I went to college to be a reporter, and I ended up being a newspaper reporter. But I also minored in English with a concentration in creative writing because I wanted to be, a novelist, a writer one day. And all the courses I took at the time were literary fiction. And it was just, to me, for me, a slog. And it was boring. And, I tell people I'm not smart enough to write literary fiction. Like, it's not me. But, I did all that then. And then life happened. I became a reporter, got laid off, moved, etc. And then it was like 2019. I saw a Facebook post that I had shared like probably 10 years before that, where I said, I used to want to write a book, but I think now I just like the idea of writing a book. And I was like, man, that's just kind of letting fear take a hold and just kind of looking through it in a different way and just saying, oh, I never wanted to write a book. I just like the idea of writing a book. And I saw that and I was like, no, I need to get back to writing. I need to write that book. And so I had an idea because I went and did a ride along here in San Diego with a cop, and this idea for the novel I wrote emerged. And so I started to write it as a short story because that's all I had ever written. And I kept writing and kept writing, and like these are kind of feeling like chapters to me more than like cohesive short story. And so I uh veered and I started writing it as a book and finished it as a book. And then once that was finished, then I started writing crime short stories again because part of this realization in 2019 was I'm not going to be a literary writer, but what do I like to read? What do I like to watch? And it's crime stories. So why don't I write crime? And so I wrote all these, I started writing crime stories, short stories after I had written my novel. And so I do look back and wonder, like, because I can see a progression of improvement in my short story work. Like my first 6 or 7 short stories that got published, they're good, they're fine. But I really start improving, in the last few years and
Yeah.
really start finding my voice and leaning into my strengths like character work and injecting the story with empathy and just hitting those beats. And so I see that progression and that improvement, and I wonder if I would have waited till I felt that to write a novel, if it would have been that much better. And so I don't know, but I think every person is probably different. I think if you're a person who has never had done a writing course, or you want to be a writer but you don't know how to get started, I think writing short stories is a great way to start that.
Yeah.
I think if you've had some experience writing before and you've written fiction here or there, and you have an idea for a novel, go for it. I mean, what's the worst that happens? You get to the end and you're like, oh, this is unpublishable. Well, you have one under your belt and you have that experience, and I think that's invaluable too.
Well, and every novel writer I know, every single one has that manuscript that just, was their test drive or
Hmm.
became their test drive because they couldn't sell it or what have you, right? It's really, it's part and parcel with doing this, right?
Right.
I keep mentioning my work in progress, but I swear, original version of that I wrote a long time ago, and it's not even close. It's a completely different thing, and right, because that's what's going to happen for the most part. You're gonna evolve. You're gonna grow, hopefully, unless you're a certain orange thing that never has grown. Let me ask you really quick. Well, before I get to the thing I was going to ask you, you mentioned empathy, and that is, I've talked to a lot of folks about that because I think it's such an important thing, and especially in crime, when you're writing crime fiction. Um, because I think one of the tricks of the trade in writing good crime fiction, because you're writing generally about maybe they're not always bad people, but somebody's doing something bad.
Hmm.
And you still have to make characters that people care about. And you have to make, storylines that keep people interested and everything. But if all you have are horrible people doing horrible things and nobody's relatable in any way, you're going to lose the reader. So the best short fiction or crime fiction, I should say, people that I know really have a knack for creating empathy in their characters, good and bad. Maybe tell me a little bit about how you like how conscious is that for you? Is it something you had to work on to develop that muscle, or maybe something different? I mean, had the role of empathy in your work. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, I don't think that I necessarily like consciously thought to work on it. I think it's just kind of comes up. I'm a very empathetic person by nature. I want to put myself in other people's shoes to understand their experience, to have, an empathetic viewpoint. And I just do that with my characters in fiction too. It makes them more well-rounded, right? Like you're going to have a cardboard character if all you give the reader is a problem the character's trying to solve. But if you give the reader a problem the character is trying to solve and the hurdles to get there are because of a trauma in their background or because of, them trying to help with their mother's stroke recovery and having to pay those medical bills or, any number one of things. In this American culture, we have hundreds of hurdles that we have to leap over. So the possibilities are endless, but I think just making your characters well-rounded by you know, thinking of your own life and the challenges you've had to overcome, even just like small daily challenges, and give your characters those same things, that's going to create empathy, I think, really naturally.
Yeah. You're also an editor. You edited a great short story anthology that came out, I think, last year, right? Was it just
Right.
2025? Uh, On Fire and Underwater, which was it's been nominated for numerous awards, very deservedly so. Really one of the finest anthologies in recent years. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Um, what did you learn from playing editor
Hmm.
in that publication that's helped you maybe as a writer?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Yeah, it was a really cool experience to be on the other side for a change and do that whole thing. Um, I think maybe the one thing that I really took away from that was that every writer is going to have their own voice. They're going to have their own approach, and uh, I don't know how this helps me be a better writer, but it's something I noticed as an editor is I didn't want to squash that. I didn't want to step over that. Um, you know, each writer came with a voice and with an approach, and those stories that we chose, that it was absolutely right approach for the anthology as a whole. And so maybe it's just, trusting yourself as a writer, if you recognize, oh, these are the same themes that I'm dealing with story after story, or this is, I'm recognize this is my voice. Like, don't shy away from those things, lean into them and own them, because I think an editor will take notice of that, and appreciate it. I know I did.
Yeah, how were you the final word on all the stories, or did you have a panel? Like, how did you go about selecting, and how many submissions did you get for that? Because I can't remember how many ended up in there.
15 stories, and
Okay.
I think we had about 65 or 70 submissions. And we had a team of editors. I think there was about 7 or 8 of us, and we all each scored each story. And then the top 25 made it to the final round, and we did another round of rating. And then I guess technically I was the final word, but I wasn't, there was a story or two I said, I really want us to look at this one again because it hadn't made it into the top 15, and then had the team reread it and discuss it. But it was very much a team effort.
That's great. Um, I almost made a reference to something someone awful. So let me rephrase it in that we live in very troubling times.
Hmm.
I think you and I are on the same page in a lot of things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I unquestionably, we live in very chaotic, very troubling times. And when COVID hit, I did a whole series of these talking to a variety of creative people I know, not just writers, about how they manage to stay creative in, such uncertain times. Because especially at the beginning of COVID, nobody knew how bad it was going to get or how long it was going to last or et cetera. Um, you know, I guess in a way we're dealing with another plague. How do you stay creative in times like this? You noted you're an empathetic person. I think I am too. And I think it's challenging when you see so much misery and so much negative, so much bad happening around you, around the world. I'm sure we both know people who have been directly negatively affected by things that are going on in the world right here at home. And it's sometimes, I know for me, I have to be immersed in it all day because I'm a political reporter. It's hard to shut it off. There's days I just simply cannot go sit at my computer anymore and try to create stuff. It overwhelms me. How do you do it? How do you stay creative? How do you keep that muscle working amidst all of this stuff that's
When I
happening?
find out, I'll let you know. It has been very difficult. And, there's been months and months I haven't been able to do anything creative, just because my mind has just been totally, you know, taken up with everything that's going on. And thank goodness last year I had the anthology to work on because, just all the ice stuff was just so heartbreaking and maddening to watch, and it still is. It's still going on, and it's just heartbreaking. And it's just like you're kind of in a sense of mourning for this country, all these things we're going through and all these people and our friends and neighbors that are being hurt. And it's so tough to be creative during that. And there are people because I've asked the same thing of friends and people at conferences and just, you know, in text groups and things. And I'm really like admire the writers who just work through it and use writing as therapy. I would love to have that switch that I could, write something as a form of therapy, but it's really tough for me. So I just for to stay creative, I just have to continuously fill up that creative well, do a lot of reading, watch really great TV and movies, and also go to conferences and have that camaraderie and get inspired by my friends and other authors and go to panels and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping once we get through this that my creativity will just skyrocket. We'll
Yeah,
see though.
I know. Sometimes it's what it feels like. Is like, something's been broken, um, and maybe permanently so, everywhere. But let's hope not. Because what it's going to take, I'm telling you, I believe this in all my soul. Artists, creatives are going to lead the way back
Yes, I
because we
believe
have
that
to.
too. Yes, I
Somebody's
believe
got
that too.
to, and I think it's going to be creative people who, help people find the beauty in the world again. Because
Yep.
there is a lot more good than there is bad. It's just unfortunately the bad has got the loudest voice all the time. And when you give them power on top of it,
Hmm.
it's very, very challenging. But I do think artists and creative people of all kinds will lead us out of all this at some point. Let's just hope it's sooner than later.
Yes.
Um, what other art forms maybe influence you? I'm very influenced by music.
Hmm.
Um, I you know I talk to writers who very similar, but it could be anything. Are there other art forms that play some role in your creativity?
Music is a huge one for me, yeah, for sure. And there is a lot of music in Waves of Burden and
Yes.
yeah. Um yeah, definitely like the music of my youth is early 90s, mid 90s rock. That's mainly what I listen to. And even now, going back uh, with everything that's been going on, I've re-listened to all my Rage albums, and it's just amazing, like how much truth is in Zach's lyrics, and how much you know rage, to use that pun, is in Tom's riffs, and it's just so inspiring, and it's it's music, digging into the lyrics. hearing the melodies, hearing the riffs, like that inspires me to no end. You know, to know that, especially like that era of music, they were kind of fighting for very similar things that we're fighting for now. They were feeling disenfranchised, they were feeling oppressed, they were trying to fight back. And it's interesting to me how, 30 plus years later, we're still going through those same things. So yeah, re-listening to all my old music has really like lifted my spirits and continue to make me uh want to produce art, like it's
Right.
it's inspiring.
I love when people complain about Rage Against the Machine, and it's like, it's right in the name.
That's right.
It's literally right in the name. What would you have them be? I mean, they're not singing about rainbows and butterflies. It's
Yeah.
right in the name. Oh my God. Um, have you now, of course, you were a reporter before you started writing fiction. Did you ever consider going into true crime, or what maybe would consider in the future doing a true crime, either short story or novel, or not novel, I guess, but a full-length book. But
Right,
I mean,
right.
is that of any interest to you?
Not right now. I won't say no, never. I did have an idea for not a true crime, but kind of um, a based on true events book on a story that I wrote back in the day about these two senior guys who were reunited. One helped liberate the other during World War II. One was in the U.S. infantry and helped liberated the other man in a concentration camp. They liberated the whole camp, and then they met in their 80s. They were living in the same town in Dallas, and they hadn't known that. And that was a really fascinating story, and I wanted to do something with that. And then I was lazy and didn't get around to it. And now they're no longer with us. Uh, but I don't think I'm interested in taking the true crime route. Like for so long, like I wrote, you know, real crime stories and covered the police, and it's liberating to kind of make the stuff up and not have to, be so, you know, stringent and, you know, follow the rules of journalism in fiction. I like the freedom of fiction.
In fiction, the bad guys, you can always have them lose. Because unfortunately, in real life, the bad guys don't lose as nearly as often.
That's right. Yeah.
It's funny. I was having a conversation with an old friend of mine just last night, and she had been a crime reporter for the big major newspaper here for years early in her career. And at some point, she just had to beg off it. That I
Mm,
cannot cover these things anymore. And my brother was a
mm.
cop, so I knew exactly what she was talking about from the things that they'd had to cover. And it wears you down. I admire the true crime people. They're some of the best investigators in the world. They can go through,
Absolutely.
they have the patience to go through, God, endless amounts of documents and interviews and all that. Bang on.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd rather just make up the ending if that's it.
Yeah.
Now, anyone out there thinking I make up my endings and my reels? No, I do not. That's not how that works.
That
Only
is
in
not
fiction.
important. Yeah.
Well, look, um, I always like to ask this kind of question too, which is, you've been in it long enough now, and we've talked about it maybe a little bit, but is there one or maybe even a couple things that you feel you've really learned in this business? Whether maybe about yourself or just about writing or about the business that you would want to tell somebody if they asked you, "Hey, I'm kind of thinking about doing this." You've done it, Curtis. What's your advice to me?
Sure. I would say the number one thing I've learned, and I think that I would recommend, is to find your people. I think it's just so huge to find people that understand you, that are doing the same thing that you're doing and can help you through the ups and the downs. I have terrific network of friends that are all writers, and we're all writing crime fiction. And I'll tell people, like, I've never felt more supported in my life, in my art, than I do right now. And it's because of that network of friends. And that network totally got me through this couple of years, 2, 3 years to find Waves of Burden, a publisher, and to get it out into the world. Like there were a lot of ups and downs through that time. And when you have people in your life that understand what you're going through and that can relate, and you can just, bitch and moan or get excited, and they meet your level of depression or excitement. Like that's such a validating feeling. So that would be my number one recommendation. And it can be tough to find those people, but a great way to start is looking at some of the great conferences we have: Left Coast Crime,
Yeah.
BoucherCon, Malice. I mean, there's a ton of different conferences, and just attending panels and following people that sound like they are like-minded, and just get out there and make some friends. So yeah.
Yeah. That's great advice. I mean, I do think the crime fiction community is very welcoming, and there's a very minimal amount of the kind of horseshit drama that you see in some clicky kind of things in the world. Um, I've always found them to be a very welcoming community. So I
Yeah.
think that's great advice. So I also always have a very themed final question, and so you and I have played this game before, so it's the same rules. I'm going to give you three people. You tell me. Let's just say I had the magic power to put you together with one of them,
Okay.
or any kind of conversation you want to have. Um, yeah, you can only choose one, of course. And then who would you choose and why? There is a theme. You will probably pick out the theme pretty quickly, but there is a theme. So the options I'm going to give you are Amos Otis, Mo Drabowski, or Lou Piniella.
Oh, I'm gonna have to say Amos Otis because Lou Piniella played for the Yankees, and I am not a Yankees fan.
Well, okay, so for those out there, Curtis is a big Kansas City Royals fan. I know this
Yeah,
about him. And all three of those people, all three of those great baseball players were all members of the 1970 Kansas City Royals.
1970.
1970s
Okay.
specifically. In fact,
Yeah.
Piniella was up and down a little bit, but then I think can't remember if I think it was 73. He was the rookie of the year with the Royals before going on to play for, yes, the Yankees. Yes, yes. He came up with Tony La Russa. They both
Mm,
are from Tampa, and sounds like they are both ginormous assholes. Back in the early days when I did sports, I covered a little bit of baseball and dealt with La Russa a few different times, and yeah, he is one cantankerous SOB, man. I'll tell you. But anyway, Amos Otis was a great player. He was a great player.
yeah.
Many times won Gold Gloves, many times All-Star. Great base stealer, great center fielder. So good choice, man. He was a really, really good player. So, all right. Curtis, thank you so much for coming on the open mic, Writers in Their Own Words. I'm going to remind everybody, Waves of Burden. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it right over his shoulder on his bookcase there. Check it out. Like I say, I'm right in the middle of it right now. It's a great read. Curtis is a great writer. Find some of his other short story work too, and if you haven't done so, go back and look at uh, um, On Fire and Underwater, because that's really one of the great short story collections from last year. Very deservedly getting lots of award nominations. So, Curtis, thanks again for coming on the open mic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich. I really appreciate it as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to leave you all with the same thing that I usually leave you with, because I left that out at the beginning, which is if you haven't hit subscribe, please do that. Um, Leave me a nice review. That's always great. Tell a friend. That's the best thing. If you know someone who wants to get into writing and would like to learn how people who do it so well as people like Curtis, this is a great way to do it. And it doesn't cost you a penny. So tell a friend all about it. That would be great. And the last thing I always say, tomorrow is not promised to anybody. So please, whatever you do, make today count. So for my guest, Curtis Ippolito, myself, Rich Eisen, this has been the Open Mic. We'll see you next time.